The silent departure. The galaxy had always known Earth. It had been a symbol of unpredictable might, innovation, and strength. From the vastness of the Milky Way to the edges of the known universe, humans were recognized not just for their boldness, but for their ability to change the course of any situation. The Galactic Council, a coalition of the most powerful and wise civilizations, had always seen humanity as a necessary ally. But everything changed in an instant when Earth disappeared. No one had expected it. It wasn't a grand announcement or an explosion. It wasn't even a war. The silence came first. The Council's signals to Earth went unanswered. At first, it was written off as a mistake, a temporary glitch in the communication systems. The rest of the galaxy moved on, assuming it was a minor issue. But as the hours passed, and then days, something began to feel wrong. Earth, the once bustling hub of intergalactic trade and influence, had simply vanished from the galaxy's radar. On the other side of the universe, a towering figure stood in the heart of the Galactic Council's command center. His name was Heltor, an alien diplomat of the Viorum species. Tall and sleek with shimmering silver skin, he had been tasked with making the official contact between the Galactic Council and Earth. He had done it many times before, with ease. Humans were reliable, predictable in their ways, or so he had thought. Heltor gazed at the blinking communication console, the screen displaying Earth's coordinates, but no response. His fingers hovered over the keys, trying once more to establish a link. There was nothing. No faint hum of static. No message. Not even a simple, "We are unable to respond at this moment." A cold feeling crept into his chest. He knew something was wrong, but he couldn't understand it. The human race was unpredictable, yes, but they were never this silent. He leaned forward and activated a direct line to Commander Velrax, the head of the Viorum military forces. His voice, calm yet tinged with concern, echoed through the speakers. "Velrax, have you heard anything from Earth?" There was a long pause before the response came. "No, it's as if they'd vanished into thin air." Heltor's brow furrowed. This wasn't just a technical failure. The humans had disappeared from every radar, every scanning system, every network. It was as though they had chosen to cut themselves off from the universe, and that made no sense. Send a fleet to their coordinates. The order was given, but Heltor knew deep down that no fleet, no matter how advanced, could find what wasn't there. There had been no warning, no explanation. Earth had simply walked away. But why? The rest of the galaxy had only begun to feel the ripple effects of this disappearance. The galactic trade routes, once thriving with goods and resources from Earth, were starting to falter. Without human participation, the flow of essential materials came to a halt. Entire systems, once dependent on human-made technologies, were now struggling. Ships that had once moved seamlessly across borders began to encounter delays. The Viorum were no longer the only ones in control of the galaxy's wealth. The balance had shifted, and no one understood why. Back on Earth, the cities were empty. The bustling streets of New York, the neon glow of Tokyo, the vast deserts of Africa, all stood still. People, workers, leaders, everyone had vanished without a trace. Those who once shaped the fate of the galaxy, who created technology that powered not just their own world but others, were now a forgotten memory. Humans didn't go quietly into the shadows. They had a reputation for fighting when pushed too far, for inventing solutions that no one else could have dreamed of. But this was different. There had been no war, no signs of conflict, just a strange, unsettling silence. Back in the council chambers, other races were beginning to notice the absence. The Tyrak, a race known for their immense strength and aggressive nature, were growing concerned. Their trade agreements with Earth had once been a major part of their economy. Now, they were on the verge of collapse. "What do we do now?" one of the Tyrak leaders asked, his voice low and uneasy. Heltor stared at the screen, his mind racing. "We wait. It was all he could say, but the uncertainty gnawed at him. The galaxy was in a state of flux. The absence of Earth was more than just the loss of a planet. It was a signal, one that no one understood yet. The universe was beginning to realize that humanity had played a larger role in its balance than anyone had ever suspected. And as the council members pondered their next moves, they had no idea that this silence was only the beginning of something much, much greater. Zeltor had a deep sense of unease. For the first time in his life, he was facing an unknown. And for the first time in the galaxy's history, it seemed that the galaxy had underestimated humanity. What they would soon learn was that humans were never as predictable as they thought. And now, they would have to face the consequences of their overconfidence. But Earth wasn't gone. Not really. It was just waiting, biding its time. And when the galaxy finally realized the truth, it would be far too late to undo the mistake they had made. The galaxy had never needed humans more than it did now. But would it be too late to get them back? The silence stretched on for weeks. The council, once filled with confident leaders and diplomats, now buzzed with tension. No one knew exactly what had happened to Earth, and yet everyone could feel the consequences. The ripple effects were felt across the galaxy, from the smallest colony to the largest empire. Zeltor, still unable to reach Earth, found himself growing more and more frustrated. He paced the marble floors of the council chamber, his thoughts clouded with confusion and worry. He couldn't understand it. Humans had always been reliable. They were not a race to simply vanish without reason. Yet, no matter how many times he tried to make contact, the same empty silence met him. Without Earth's participation, the once thriving trade routes now lay in chaos. Star systems that depended on Earth's technology and resources began to show signs of weakness. The Karenites, a proud race known for their deep space mining operations, were struggling to mine essential resources without human tech. Their equipment, once maintained by humans, began to break down, and no one could figure out how to fix it. Without Earth's vast network of engineers and technicians, the Karenites were forced to shut down major operations, sending shockwaves through the galactic economy. Across the galaxy, the Vurim fleet had also encountered trouble. Zeltor's people, once masters of long-range travel and intergalactic communication, now found themselves limited. Earth had provided the raw materials to maintain the Council's vast network of communication relays. With Earth gone, the entire communication system began to malfunction. Messages sent between distant star systems arrived garbled, and sometimes not at all. Ships traveling through deep space started to disappear, no longer able to rely on the well-established Earth systems that had kept them safe from dangerous cosmic anomalies. One particular issue that the Council didn't anticipate was the sudden disappearance of trade goods. Food, medicine, energy sources. Earth had been a major supplier. Systems that had relied on human exports were now starving for resources, unable to adapt to the shortage. Tyrak colonies, which had been built around Earth's resources, now found themselves on the brink of collapse. Their citizens, strong in body but not in spirit, began to panic. One of the most troubling things was the growing sense of fear that spread across the galaxy. Species that had once stood tall and proud now trembled at the thought of a galaxy without humans. The Tenra, an ancient and highly intelligent race, had always respected humanity's ability to come up with solutions when the odds were against them. But now, without Earth's intervention, the galaxy's future seemed uncertain. The panic started to spread like wildfire, first among the minor species who depended on Earth, then to the more powerful races. One by one, leaders of the Council, most of whom had been complacent in their dependence on humans, began to voice their concerns. In a particularly heated meeting, the Greth's representative slammed his hand on the table. "We cannot wait any longer," the Greth shouted, his many eyes glaring at the Council. The humans were the backbone of this galaxy. We've relied on their technologies, their resources, their trade routes for centuries. Without them, we are nothing. Zeltor stood motionless, the reality of the situation sinking in. He had always seen the humans as necessary, but he hadn't realized just how necessary they were until now. It was like a giant puzzle piece had been removed from the galactic machine, and everything else was beginning to break apart. It wasn't just about trade and resources. The absence of humanity also created a void in leadership. The humans, while often seen as unpredictable and chaotic, had a certain quality that other species lacked. They were innovative, constantly solving problems that no one else could even see. Their presence had kept the galaxy stable, whether the other species had realized it or not. But now, without them, that stability was gone. The Grith's words rang true for many in the room. Even the once unstoppable Viurim were starting to falter. Zeltor knew that if the situation wasn't handled soon, the damage could be irreparable. The longer Earth remained silent, the more fragile the galaxy's peace became. As the Council convened in another emergency meeting, Zeltor could feel the walls closing in. The once proud civilizations of the galaxy were now struggling with something they had never had to face before, the harsh reality that they had underestimated humanity. They had always thought they were in control, that they could depend on Earth whenever things went wrong. But now, they were beginning to see the terrible truth. They were utterly unprepared for a galaxy without humans. Zeltor turned to the screen, where Earth's coordinates still blinked, a constant reminder of what had been lost. He knew something had changed on Earth. There had to be an answer, and he was determined to find it. But even he, with all his wisdom, could not guess what lay ahead. The galaxy was on the edge of chaos, and the missing piece, Earth, might just be the one thing that could either save or destroy everything. For the first time in a long while, Zeltor felt fear, and it wasn't just his own. It was the fear of every species in the galaxy. They had taken humanity for granted, and now they were beginning to realize that the price of that mistake might be far higher than they could ever imagine. The pressure across the galaxy was mounting. As more and more systems fell into chaos, the members of the Galactic Council convened again. The once serene chambers, filled with wisdom and calm diplomacy, now felt heavy with a sense of dread. No one was sure how to proceed, and even Zeltor, the seasoned diplomat, could feel the weight of uncertainty on his shoulders. For days, the Council had been analyzing every possibility. Could Earth have been destroyed? They had considered it, but there was no evidence of an attack or destruction on the planet. Was there a galactic disaster that cut them off? Again, no signs pointed in that direction. Had the humans turned their backs on the galaxy? The idea was too unsettling, but the evidence was stacking up. The humans had walked away. But why? Then something unexpected happened. In the heart of the Council's main chamber, a transmission came through, faint and distorted, but unmistakable. The signal was weak, barely audible, but it carried a message. It was from Earth. The Council members paused, as if time itself had stopped. The silence that followed was thick, charged with anticipation. Had Earth returned? Zeltor moved swiftly to the console, his heart racing. His fingers danced over the controls, and soon the image on the screen began to clear. The grainy image showed a human face, weathered but unmistakably familiar. It was not a face of a leader, but of an ordinary human, someone who had no place in the power structures of the galaxy. The man spoke, his voice slow but steady, though clearly strained. To the Galactic Council and all who listen. Zeltor leaned in, hanging on every word. The face on the screen seemed almost out of place, as if it didn't belong in the grand halls of the Council. But then, the message continued. We've learned a lot in our time away from you. The man paused, as though the weight of his words hung heavily in the air. We've learned that the galaxy is much weaker than it looks, that it's held together by fragile threads, built on dependence and illusion. And we've learned that no matter how hard you try to control everything, the universe will always have a way of reminding you that it's bigger than any one of us. The transmission cut out momentarily, and for a heartbeat, the entire Council held its breath. The thought that Earth had sent a message, not to seek help, but to deliver a warning, made the air even thicker with unease. The man's voice returned, but this time it carried a deeper sense of finality. This is your warning. You've relied on us for far too long. You've depended on Earth as the pillar of your systems, your trade, your technologies, your very sense of security. But no more. We are no longer your crutch, and we will no longer be at your beck and call. Zeltor's mind raced. What did this mean? Why had Earth decided to cut itself off in such a final, irrevocable way? The message continued, but it was now clearer than before. There was something in the tone that felt different. We're not gone. We've just stopped playing your game. You see, you've forgotten what made humanity valuable. It wasn't our resources, our technologies, or our military. It was the way we approached problems. The way we always found a way to survive, to adapt. We didn't need a system to tell us how to think. And maybe that's what you've forgotten. The transmission flickered again, and just as quickly, the screen returned to darkness. The room was dead silent. The council members were stunned into disbelief. A few whispered among themselves, too afraid to speak openly. It wasn't the words themselves that caused the shift in the air. It was the underlying truth of what was said. Earth wasn't just cutting itself off. It was rejecting the very system that the galaxy had built itself upon. Zeltor stood motionless, trying to process the words. The galaxy had relied too heavily on Earth, he realized. They had built their wealth, their stability, their very understanding of the universe around the belief that Earth's ingenuity was the answer to all problems. But Earth had pulled away. The humans were no longer just the problem solvers. They had become the ones who saw the flaw in the system. Zeltor turned to the rest of the council, his voice quiet but firm. We can't ignore this. Earth isn't just absent. They've sent us a message. And that message is clear. We've relied too much on them. We've become weak. And if we continue to depend on them, we'll fall. The members of the council exchanged uneasy glances. They had long ago accepted their position as the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. The idea that they were vulnerable, that their strength came from an outside source, was too difficult to accept. But the message from Earth couldn't be denied. The galaxy had long thought that humans were just another species, useful but replaceable. They were wrong. Zeltor's mind began to race. Could this be the beginning of something even bigger? Earth had made it clear that they would not help anymore. But what if they were giving the galaxy one final chance to grow on its own? What if Earth's disappearance wasn't the end, but the start of a new chapter, where the galaxy would either rise to meet the challenge or crumble under its own fragility? The answer, Zeltor realized, was not something the council could figure out on its own. The message from Earth was a challenge to everyone in the galaxy, and it would take more than just one species to solve it. The hidden message wasn't just a rejection of the status quo. It was an invitation to something greater. But what would the galaxy do with that invitation? The next move, Zeltor knew, was going to be the most important one yet, and whatever happened next would change the galaxy forever. The message from Earth had shaken the very foundation of the Galactic Council. What had once seemed like a vast and unbreakable system, held together by diplomacy, resources, and trade, was now unraveling. The humans had sent a clear signal. They were done playing by the Council's rules. The galaxy had been forced to reckon with the fact that it had grown weak, reliant, and stagnant. The ripple effect began to spread across every corner of the galaxy. Zeltor, the seasoned diplomat, had never felt so uncertain. He had witnessed the power of Earth firsthand, seen their ingenuity, and yet there was still a part of him that had never truly understood humanity. They were a strange, unpredictable species. No matter how many times he tried to categorize their actions, they would always surprise him. As the days passed, the council convened again, but the mood had shifted. The Virum, once proud and confident, now appeared nervous, almost restless. The Karenites, whose fleets were now struggling without Earth's advanced technology, were visibly distraught. Even the Tenra, with their wisdom and long lifespans, appeared troubled. Trade halted. Communications broke down. Systems began to malfunction. What had once been a smooth, efficient system of intergalactic cooperation was now fractured, like a shattered glass that no one could put back together. Across the galaxy, smaller species who had long depended on Earth's technology began to panic. Without Earth's steady presence, they felt lost. The Jora, a small but resourceful race of engineers, began to report major failures in their life support systems. They had never before needed to understand the intricacies of deep space travel. Earth had always provided that knowledge. But now, they were forced to face the brutal reality that their survival, their future, was no longer guaranteed. The once bustling trade routes were growing quieter every day. As the Necra Confederacy, one of the major trading partners of Earth, began to close its doors. It was a domino effect that no one had anticipated. On the surface of Earth itself, things were quieter. The humans, who had withdrawn from the galactic stage, had begun to rebuild. Tor had assumed they would be easy to find, that they would want to rejoin the galactic system, but he was wrong. The humans were focused on something else, something deeper. Their message had not just been a warning. It had been a call for introspection. Humanity had stepped away from the galaxy, not because they had fallen or failed, but because they had come to a realization. They didn't need the galaxy to define them anymore. They could stand alone, stronger and more capable than they had ever been before. The Viorim, in particular, were struggling with this. For centuries, they had relied on humans for innovation, for solutions to problems they could never solve on their own. Their fleet's capabilities had been enhanced by human-made weapons, their medical technology had been based on human designs, and their starship technology was based on human research. Now, they were faced with a shocking truth. Without humanity, their fleet was nothing. As tensions rose, Tor found himself back in the council chambers, facing the consequences of their reliance on Earth. The message from Earth had not just been a wake-up call. It had been an exposure. The galaxy had gotten comfortable, too comfortable. It had assumed that humanity would always be there, that their resources, their intellect, would never run dry. Now, as the Viorim and Karenites argued about who would take charge, who would step in to replace Earth, Tor realized that there was no replacement. The problem wasn't that Earth had gone silent. The problem was that the galaxy had never prepared itself for the day when humanity might decide it was time to stand on its own. Across the vast expanse of space, a growing sense of panic began to grip the stars. The galaxy was no longer a united force, but a collection of desperate civilizations trying to survive without the one species that had always been there to lend a hand. The Council was losing control. Their once peaceful meetings were now filled with heated debates, accusations, and fear. No one knew what to do next. They were all starting to realize that they had relied too much on humanity, not just for technology, but for stability itself. In the quiet corners of the galaxy, smaller colonies began to form their own alliances. They were banding together, trying to find ways to survive in a galaxy that was no longer as predictable as it once was. They started to look inward, asking themselves difficult questions. What had the humans known that they hadn't? What had they missed in their quest for power and control? Back in the council chamber, Tor felt a wave of realization. He had been too focused on finding a solution to Earth's disappearance. What he should have been doing all along was questioning the system itself. The galaxy didn't need to depend on Earth to survive. It needed to become self-sustaining, to find strength within itself. But the question remained, could it? With Earth's absence, a new opportunity was unfolding in front of the galaxy, but it was also a dangerous one. The galaxy had become complacent, and now it was faced with an uncertain future. Would it rise to the challenge, or would it crumble under the weight of its own fears? Tor didn't know the answer, but he was starting to understand that the galaxy was facing its greatest test yet, and it was a test that would determine whether it could thrive, or whether it would fall into chaos. The humans had given them a glimpse of something more. But whether they could rise to meet it was another question entirely. The weeks following Earth's message brought nothing but uncertainty to the galaxy. The Council had tried to respond, to offer solutions, but it was clear that their once unshakable influence was beginning to crumble. The realization that Earth had withdrawn completely, leaving the galaxy to its own devices, had triggered a wave of fear and confusion across countless worlds. Zeltor paced restlessly in the Council's grand chamber. The massive windows revealed the vastness of space outside, but all he could focus on was the turmoil within. His mind was racing, trying to find some clue, some spark of hope that would pull the galaxy back from the brink of collapse. But as each day passed, the weight of the situation grew heavier. As he walked through the halls of the Council building, he couldn't ignore the whispers and anxious conversations filling the air. Leaders from across the galaxy had been calling in, desperate for answers, but the Council had none to offer. The system that had once been stable was now teetering on the edge of disarray. The galaxy had become fractured, and its leaders were realizing, too late, how much they had relied on Earth. The Karenites, powerful but slow-moving, had begun to grow restless. Without Earth's technological expertise, their advanced fleets were now struggling. They lacked the speed and adaptability that had once been their signature, and without the human edge in their research, they were beginning to fall behind. The once proud Karenite leaders began to question their entire approach. How had they allowed themselves to fall into such a trap of dependence? The Viurim, on the other hand, had taken a more drastic step. Their leaders had already started to consider the possibility of forging new alliances, ones that didn't rely on Earth. They had begun reaching out to previously untrusted races, trying to form a new coalition that could stand without Earth's aid. But even they knew that their actions were based more on panic than on any real plan. They were floundering, lost in a galaxy they no longer understood. But it wasn't just the powerful civilizations that were feeling the impact. The smaller species, those who had once thrived under Earth's protection, now found themselves vulnerable. Colonies across the galaxy, from the farthest reaches of the Confederacy to the edges of the Horan Empire, were beginning to experience the consequences of their reliance on the humans. Ships weren't arriving on time. Resources weren't being delivered. Some systems were even beginning to report strange, unexplained failures in their infrastructure. As panic spread like wildfire, the smaller species began to turn inward. Factions that had once been united by trade and mutual defense were now splitting apart. Many of them were beginning to wonder if they had any chance of surviving without the humans. Some were considering radical solutions, like creating their own fleets or gathering weapons, in case they needed to defend themselves from larger, more powerful forces. Meanwhile, on Earth, things were different. The humans had withdrawn from the galaxy's affairs, but they had not retreated into isolation. The message they had sent had been clear. They would no longer serve as the galaxy's crutch. But rather than crumble without the Council's aid, the humans had begun to evolve in ways no one could have predicted. Zeltor had long been aware of humanity's capacity for innovation, but this new development was something entirely different. Humans were adapting, but not just in a technological sense. They were rethinking the very way they interacted with the universe. Earth had always been a place of creativity, a birthplace of ideas and solutions that seemed to come from nowhere. And now, without the constant distractions of the galaxy's political mess, the humans were refocusing that energy inward. The Viurim had received scattered reports from humans who had ventured beyond their homeworld, ones who spoke of a new age of human discovery. Earth's population was beginning to tap into something far deeper than their technology. The humans were not just becoming self-reliant. They were pushing the boundaries of their understanding of the universe itself. Zeltor didn't fully understand it, but he knew this wasn't just the return of humanity's independence. This was something new, something more dangerous for the galaxy. The humans weren't just withdrawing. They were evolving into something no one could predict. He could no longer deny it. Earth was no longer the same. The species that had once been a tool for solving problems and saving the galaxy was now becoming something different, a force that might one day stand apart, or even challenge the council itself. Back in the council chambers, tensions continued to rise. Every new report, every new communication, seemed to confirm one thing. The galaxy was headed toward a breaking point. The systems that had once been thriving were beginning to disintegrate under the pressure of their own failures. Trade routes remained closed. The once stable alliance between the council races was fracturing at an alarming rate. In a desperate attempt to stabilize the galaxy, Xeltor called for one last meeting of the council's leaders. This time, there would be no more debates or empty promises. He knew that the galaxy could no longer afford complacency. The time for change had arrived, and the future of the galaxy was now at stake. As the leaders gathered in the council chamber, the weight of what was about to unfold settled over them. For the first time, they were facing the reality that they could not rely on Earth anymore. The galaxy had to find a way to evolve, to adapt, and to survive on its own. And Xeltor, once a firm believer in the system, was beginning to see the truth in Earth's message. The galaxy's greatest strength had never been in its politics or alliances. It had always been in its ability to innovate, to grow, and to survive. But could they rise to the challenge? Would they learn from humanity's example, or would they collapse under the weight of their own fears and weaknesses? The storm was gathering, and no one knew which way it would break. The room stirred with unease. The humans had made their choice clear, and it wasn't a choice that left much room for negotiation. Earth had chosen independence, chosen to break free from the galactic system they had once helped shape. But desperation had taken hold of Xeltor, and he knew that unless the humans returned, the galaxy would crumble. The Karenites, their once powerful fleet now a shadow of its former self, were the first to speak. But they've turned their backs on us. We've relied on them for centuries, and now they've abandoned us. Why should they help us now? Xeltor's eyes narrowed. He could see the fear in the Karenites' eyes, and it only fueled his resolve. Because if we fall apart, they will be dragged down with us. Earth may be independent now, but they are not immune to the chaos spreading through the galaxy. If we don't act, they will be forced to face the consequences as well. The Virum leader, Rasor, a being of immense stature and wisdom, rose slowly from his seat. His voice, though calm, carried an edge of finality. The humans have shown us that they do not fear the consequences of isolation. Perhaps it is we who are the problem. Perhaps it is time we learn to stand on our own 2 feet. Xeltor bit back his frustration. Rasor was right in some respects, but the reality was that the galaxy's infrastructure was already crumbling. It was too late to change everything overnight. We don't have the luxury of time, Xeltor countered. We need a plan, and we need it now. The leaders fell silent once again. It was clear that no one had an answer. The fear was palpable, and the future of the galaxy seemed more uncertain than ever. But then, something unexpected happened. A communication came through. It was from Earth. Xeltor's heart skipped a beat as the message flickered onto the screen in front of them. "We've been watching you," the message began, the voice of a human representative echoing through the chamber. "You've made your bed, and now you must lie in it. The time for cooperation has passed." The room was filled with stunned silence. No one had expected this. The humans weren't coming back. They weren't interested in patching up the broken system. But then, the message continued. "However, there is a way forward." The screen flickered once more, and a new message appeared, this time with clear instructions for the leaders of the galaxy. The humans weren't offering their hand in partnership. They were offering something far more valuable: knowledge. The humans had spent their time, since their withdrawal, developing new technologies, new ways of thinking, new innovations that could change the very fabric of galactic society. And they were willing to share it, but not for free. The price: independence. The message was clear. If the galaxy wanted to survive, it had to learn to stand on its own, to evolve, and to adapt. The humans would no longer provide answers. They would only offer the tools to find them. Xeltor stood still, his mind racing. This was humanity's true gift to the galaxy. a chance to grow, to innovate, to finally break free of the system that had held it captive for so long. But it would require sacrifices. The galaxy would have to let go of old systems, old ways of thinking. And it would have to work together, without relying on the one species that had always been their crutch. Could the galaxy rise to this challenge? Could it leave behind its dependence on Earth and become something greater? The silence in the room was deafening, but in that moment, Zeltor knew the galaxy had reached a crossroads. The time for change had come, and it would either evolve or it would fall. The final decision rested in their hands. The Galactic Council sat in stunned silence as the final message from Earth faded from the screen. The words had left an indelible mark on every leader present. It was as if the galaxy had been awakened from a deep slumber, forced to confront the harsh truth of its own fragility. The last fragile threads of dependence had been severed. The galaxy could no longer hide behind the protection of Earth's technological superiority. Zeltor's mind raced as he processed the implications of the message. The humans had done what no one else could. They had challenged the entire system, forcing everyone to face the reality of their situation. And they had done so without firing a single shot, without launching an attack, without demanding a thing in return. They had simply walked away. And in that quiet departure, they had changed everything. Zeltor knew that the humans' decision to retreat had been a bitter pill for many to swallow. The galaxy's systems had once been built on the foundation of human ingenuity, their fleets, their knowledge, their technology. But now that foundation had been pulled away, the galaxy was forced to rebuild itself from the ground up. The first few days after the message had been received were filled with panic and confusion. The council had met endlessly, discussing their next moves, trying to come to terms with the fact that Earth was no longer a part of the equation. Some factions had immediately turned inward, pulling their resources into isolation, focusing only on their own survival. Others had begun to argue, blaming each other for their reliance on humanity in the first place. But despite the chaos, Zeltor saw something else emerging. There was a sense of unity, though reluctant and uncertain. Some leaders were beginning to realize that the galaxy's survival did not rest on Earth's return, but on its own ability to innovate and adapt. They had been given the tools they needed, not from Earth, but from within themselves. The galaxy was full of untapped potential, waiting to be unlocked. All it needed was the will to change. It wasn't long before the first small victories started to appear. The Viorim, a species that had once been reliant on Earth's technological advancements, had developed a new energy source of their own, something that could power entire fleets without the need for external resources. The Karenites had begun to rebuild their economy, focusing on sustainable resources and trading with smaller independent planets. Even the Necra Confederacy, long isolated, had started to open its borders once again, choosing to embrace collaboration rather than isolation. But the true turning point came when the Necran consulate approached the council with an offer, the chance to form a new kind of alliance, one built not on dependency, but on mutual respect, creativity, and independence. They proposed a council of innovation, a new kind of galactic union where the focus would be on developing new technologies, exchanging ideas, and empowering each species to solve its own problems. It was an offer that many had never expected, but in the wake of Earth's withdrawal, it was the only path forward. The idea quickly spread across the galaxy, and soon leaders from all corners of the galaxy were joining the discussions. The Council of Innovation would not be a place for trade routes and treaties. It would be a forum for collaboration and self-reliance. Zeltor knew that the road ahead would be difficult. There were still many challenges to overcome, old rivalries, broken systems, and deep-seated fears about the future. But for the first time in years, he felt a sense of hope. The galaxy had been given a chance to grow, to evolve, and to thrive on its own merits. The humans had walked away from the galaxy, but in doing so, they had sparked something greater than anyone could have imagined. As Zeltor stood before the new Council of Innovation, Looking out over a room filled with leaders from every species, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The galaxy was no longer bound by the past. It was a new beginning, a fresh start. The time of dependence had ended. The age of innovation had begun. And in the end, the galaxy would realize that the greatest gift humanity had ever given was not in the technologies they shared, but in the courage they had shown to walk away. The future of the galaxy was in its own hands now, and it was brighter than it had ever been before. The galaxy had always been a place of order. The Galactic Council, made up of alien species from every corner of the universe, decided the fate of planets with cold precision. And today, they made a decision that would change everything. Earth, a small, seemingly insignificant planet, was about to become the target of their wrath. The council chamber was a vast, imposing room, illuminated by a cold blue light that cast shadows across the faces of the alien leaders. Around a long, circular table sat representatives from dozens of different species, creatures with scales, multiple eyes, and forms that would seem alien to the people of Earth. The air was thick with tension as they debated the fate of Earth. It was rare for such a unanimous vote to occur, but today was different. The humans had caught their attention, and not in a good way. One of the council members, a towering figure with 4 arms, banged a fist on the table. It's time to act. The humans are a threat. Their technology is advancing too quickly. They will eventually pose a danger to us all. He paused, his alien eyes scanning the room, as if daring anyone to disagree. We must enslave them before they can challenge us. A murmur of agreement swept across the chamber. Another alien, a species with a long, sinuous neck and sharp, glowing eyes, spoke up. The humans are far too primitive. They will submit easily. We can control them and use their resources for our own gain. He spoke with cold certainty, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. From the other side of the room, a smaller alien, who resembled a floating jellyfish, floated forward. We have underestimated them before. We should not make that mistake again. The alien's voice was softer, but there was wisdom in his tone. However, I agree that their growth must be stopped. We need to take action before they become a bigger threat. The council members nodded, the decision nearly made. Earth's fate seemed sealed. An unanimous vote was cast, and the decision was final. Earth would be enslaved, and its people would become subjects of the Galactic Empire. The leaders around the table exchanged cold glances, already planning how they would divide the spoils of their conquest. Back on Earth, however, the situation was very different. Earth had never been part of the Galactic Council's plans, and the leaders of the planet knew nothing of the decisions being made in that distant chamber. But for years, Earth had been preparing for the possibility of invasion, preparing for something no one else thought was possible. The humans had been building their defenses in secret, under the radar of any prying eyes. Their technology, though not as advanced as the Council's, was enough to defend their home. And they knew they had something no one else could predict: their will to survive. In a dark, windowless room deep within a military bunker, Earth's leaders gathered around a holographic display, their faces set in grim determination. General Miranda Hall stood at the head of the table, her posture straight, her eyes focused on the screen before her. The image flickered and zoomed in on the approaching alien fleet, massive ships cutting through the atmosphere as they made their descent toward Earth. "We've been preparing for this moment our entire lives," General Hall said, her voice steady, yet filled with an unspoken intensity. "We knew this day would come, and we've built everything we need to fight back." Her words hung in the air for a moment as the other leaders exchanged glances. They knew what was at stake: their planet, their families, their very survival. The human race had never backed down from a challenge before, and this would be no different. As the hologram displayed the fleet's position, Lieutenant Marcus Finn stepped forward. His face was young, but his eyes held the weight of years of military training. Their technology may be more advanced, but they don't know what they're up against. We have weapons they don't even know exist. General Hall nodded. We're not just going to defend Earth. We're going to show them the strength of the human spirit. Her words carried power, an unshakable belief in humanity's ability to overcome. It's time to execute our plan. Across Earth, in hidden facilities, scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, monitoring the alien ships as they moved closer. The planet's defense systems, built over years of covert preparation, sprang to life. Satellites hummed with activity, and massive underground bunkers prepared for the first wave of the alien invasion. Humanity's weapons were ready: advanced electromagnetic pulse guns, ion cannons, and other technology that could match or even exceed what the invaders had. But it wasn't just the weapons that gave humanity hope. It was their determination, their refusal to submit. As the alien fleet descended, the tension on Earth reached a fever pitch. People gathered in their homes, watching the skies with a mixture of fear and defiance. The alien fleet, with its massive ships that could block out the sun, cast an ominous shadow over the planet. Yet despite the overwhelming odds, humanity did not flinch. They stood firm, their resolve hardening by the second. The Council ships hovered above Earth's surface, the sleek alien craft gleaming in the sunlight. They were ready to carry out their mission: subjugate the humans and claim their world for the galactic empire. But as the ships began to lower, they remained unaware of the growing power on Earth. The humans were ready. The battle for survival had begun, and Earth was not going to go down without a fight. The Council may have underestimated humanity, but that was about to be their biggest mistake. The vast, sleek ships of the Galactic Council loomed over Earth, casting long shadows on the planet's surface. As they descended through the atmosphere, they looked like harbingers of doom. The air around the Council fleet crackled with energy, its vast size dwarfing anything humanity had ever built. The hum of the alien ship's engines echoed through the atmosphere, signaling their arrival. The time for negotiations, for peace, had long passed. Now, it was time for war. On Earth, tension was palpable. All across the globe, governments went into emergency mode, issuing alerts as the alien fleet arrived. But in secret military bunkers and hidden facilities, humanity was already in motion. The world had been preparing for this day for years. No one knew when the Galactic Council would strike, but humanity had always been ready, building up a stockpile of weapons and technology in preparation for the unimaginable. General Miranda Hall stood in the control room of one of Earth's most advanced defense bases. The room was quiet, save for the beeping of various monitors and the low hum of machinery working tirelessly. Her eyes were fixed on the holographic display of the alien fleet, slowly making its descent toward Earth. "We have one shot at this," General Hall said, her voice steady, but there was a fire in her eyes. "We can't afford to fail." Her team, a group of engineers, scientists, and military officers, was gathered around, waiting for the orders to begin Earth's counterattack. Lieutenant Marcus Finn stood beside her, analyzing the incoming data on his screen. "We've deployed the ion cannons across all major cities," Finn reported. "The EMP grid is active, and we've also deployed the new gravity disruptor systems. We're ready for them." General Hall nodded. "It's time. Activate the defense systems." Across Earth, the planet's hidden military forces sprang to life. The moment the alien ships began to lower, the humans launched their first strike. Hundreds of satellites in orbit around Earth fired coordinated beams of energy, aimed at the approaching alien vessels. It wasn't enough to destroy them, but it sent a clear message. Earth was not an easy target. The alien fleet faltered for a moment, confused by the sudden onslaught. The alien captains, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies without resistance, were taken aback by the force of Earth's retaliation. This wasn't in the plan," one of the alien commanders muttered, staring at the sensor readings flashing on his screen. The Galactic Council had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated Earth and its people, thinking them weak and easy to control. What they didn't account for was humanity's determination. The humans may not have had the same advanced technology as the Council, but they had something far more dangerous: resilience. On the surface, the citizens of Earth held their breath as their skies filled with the bright lights of battle. Some watched from the safety of their homes, while others rushed to the streets, their eyes glued to the skies as explosions lit up the atmosphere. The sounds of massive detonations echoed across cities as Earth's weapons began to strike at the alien fleet. Each shot, each explosion, was a declaration. Earth wasn't going to kneel without a fight. In space, Earth's forces launched their most powerful weapon yet, massive ion pulses that crackled through the vacuum of space, cutting through the shields of the incoming alien ships. The ships rocked violently, their shields failing under the intensity of the blasts. The first wave of the galactic fleet was taking damage. But the Council wasn't going to give up so easily. Alien fighters broke off from the larger ships, swooping down toward Earth in waves. They were fast, agile, and deadly, but humanity was ready. The sky above Earth became a battleground, filled with streaks of light as Earth's defense fighters engaged in dogfights with the alien craft. The explosions from the space battles lit up the skies in brilliant flashes, a stark contrast to the once calm and peaceful Earth. General Hall watched the chaos unfold through the holographic display. "We've shaken them, but they're not backing down. Prepare for the next wave." Her voice never faltered. Earth had only just begun to show the Galactic Council what it was made of. Meanwhile, in a war room deep underground, Lieutenant Finn stared at his screen, tracking the alien fleet's movements. "General, their reinforcements are on the way. If we don't disrupt their supply lines, we won't be able to hold them off for long." "We'll disrupt their supply lines," General Hall said with a determined look in her eyes. "Launch the gravity disruptors and activate the EMP grids on all major routes." The gravity disruptors were Earth's trump card. These devices, capable of altering gravitational fields, would slow down the alien reinforcements, giving humanity precious time to regroup. As the command was given, the devices were deployed, causing a ripple effect across space, distorting the movement of the alien ships. For the first time, the Galactic Council was on the defensive. Their fleet, once in complete control, was now struggling to maintain its dominance. The humans were not only surviving, they were fighting back, and their resistance was becoming a force to be reckoned with. But the Council wasn't the type to give up. The next phase of their invasion was about to begin. They would bring in their ultimate weapon, a massive warship that could destroy entire cities in a single blast. The humans were about to face their greatest challenge yet. The battle for Earth had only just begun, and humanity's greatest strength, its refusal to give up, was just starting to show. The question on everyone's mind was, could Earth withstand the full might of the Galactic Council, or would humanity's will to survive be enough to turn the tide? The suspense was unbearable. Earth's fate was now in the hands of its people, and they were ready to do whatever it took to protect their world. The battle above Earth raged on, the sky streaked with flashes of light, as explosions rocked the alien fleet. Humanity's defenses were holding, but for how long? The Galactic Council's ships, though damaged, were relentless in their assault. They were used to easily conquering lesser species, but Earth had proven itself to be an unexpected challenge. The tides of war were shifting, but the humans knew that the true test was just beginning. In the command center, General Hall's face remained calm despite the chaos unfolding around her. She was a woman of action, and right now, Earth needed all the strategic brilliance she could muster. Her hands moved over the control panel as she gave orders, each decision calculated with precision. "We've taken out a third of their fleet, but they're sending reinforcements," Lieutenant Finn reported, his voice strained with the pressure of the ongoing battle. "They're coming in fast, and we've only got so many resources left." General Hall nodded, acknowledging the gravity of the situation. "Initiate Plan B. We need to hit them where it hurts." Plan B was humanity's secret weapon, a series of hidden satellites equipped with advanced tech far beyond anything the Galactic Council had ever encountered. These satellites were scattered across space, placed there years ago, when humanity knew the Council might come one day. The satellites were powered by a source so powerful it could cripple even the most advanced alien technology. As the order was given, the satellites activated, sending powerful electromagnetic pulses across the vast expanse of space. The pulses hit the incoming alien ships like a sledgehammer, disabling their navigation systems and communications. The fleet shuddered under the assault, their once coordinated movements now erratic. What just happened? An alien commander yelled, panic creeping into his voice. His ship's systems flickered as the electromagnetic waves fried their circuitry. The Council's fleet was no longer invincible. The tables had turned. Deploy the reserves, the alien commander barked, but it was too late. The reserve forces were scattered, unable to regroup in time. On Earth's surface, the citizens watched anxiously as the battle continued. Across the world, the skies were filled with the echoes of war. In major cities, civilians huddled in shelters, their eyes glued to monitors that tracked the space battles. Though they were safe for the moment, the tension was unbearable. Would their planet survive? Back in the war room, General Hall was not celebrating. She knew that the real test would come when the Galactic Council sent their ultimate weapon, the Dreadnought. This ship, unlike anything Earth had ever seen, could decimate entire cities with a single blast. The Council had kept it hidden, waiting for the moment when they needed to crush any resistance. General Hall's mind raced as she considered their next move. "We can't let them get to the planet's surface," she muttered. "If the Dreadnought arrives, it's over." Lieutenant Finn turned to her, a grim expression on his face. "We can't stop them with just our current defenses, General. We need more firepower." General Hall's eyes locked on a new screen that had just flickered to life. A top-secret project, codenamed Prometheus, was ready for activation. It had been designed for this very moment. A weapon capable of taking down even the mightiest of the galactic fleet. But it was untested, and using it now meant risking everything. "Activate Prometheus," she ordered. The room fell silent as the command was given. The eyes of everyone in the control room were fixed on the screens, watching as the weapon came online. Prometheus was a devastating energy weapon designed to channel the power of a star into a focused beam capable of tearing through anything in its path. It had been humanity's last resort, and now it was their only hope. As the weapon powered up, the air in the command center felt heavier. The moment of truth was approaching. Would Prometheus work? Would it be enough to stop the Dreadnought? A loud hum filled the room as Prometheus came to life. General Hall gave a sharp nod. Fire. The massive beam of energy shot out from a hidden base deep within Earth's core, streaking across the sky. It hit the alien fleet with the force of 1,000 storms. The beam connected with the Dreadnought, tearing through its massive shields, and for a moment, the universe held its breath. The alien ship staggered, its systems failing, and then, with a massive explosion, the Dreadnought was gone. The shockwave of the explosion spread through space, rippling across the surrounding fleet. The remaining alien ships, now in disarray, tried to regroup, but they had lost their leader, their ultimate weapon. On Earth, a cheer rose from the control room. The weapon had worked. Humanity had struck a devastating blow. But General Hall knew better than to celebrate too soon. The battle was far from over. The Galactic Council still had resources, and they would not back down easily. "We've won this round," she said, her voice steady but filled with resolve. But the war is far from over. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Galactic Fleet, the alien commanders were in turmoil. The loss of the Dreadnought was catastrophic, but even as they scrambled to reassess their strategy, a sense of dread crept over them. They had underestimated Earth, and now they were paying the price. Back on Earth, the war was just beginning to show its true scale. Humanity had fought back, but the Council was not easily defeated, As Earth's leaders prepared for the next phase, they knew that the real battle for survival had only just begun, and the fate of the planet hung in the balance. After the devastating defeat of their dreadnought, the Galactic Council retreated to regroup. The alien commanders were shaken, and their once unified front was now fractured. The Council's strategy had been flawed, and Earth had proven itself to be a far more formidable foe than they had anticipated. But despite the setback, they were not ready to give up. High above Earth, the fleet's remaining ships hovered in space, their commanders fiercely debating their next move. They could not allow this human uprising to continue. The consequences of failure were unthinkable, and their pride would not let them yield. The Council would strike back with everything they had. "We will not be humiliated by these primitive creatures," an alien general declared, slamming his fist on the table. "We will reclaim control over Earth, no matter the cost." As the alien commanders prepared their next attack, the leaders of Earth, too, were making their own plans. General Hall sat at the head of the war room table, studying the holographic map of the galaxy, her eyes narrowed in focus. Humanity had managed to hold their ground for now, but she knew that the Council would not rest until they had defeated Earth once and for all. "We have to strike fast," General Hall said. "If they're coming for us again, we need to be ready. It's time to hit them where it hurts." The next phase of the battle was about to begin, and the stakes were higher than ever. Earth's military had already proven its mettle, but the Council was bringing in reinforcements. The alien fleet was larger now, more determined and more vicious. But Earth was far from helpless. General Hall knew that they had the element of surprise, and she intended to use it to their advantage. In the depths of Earth's underground bases, humanity's secret weapon, Prometheus, was being recharged. The weapon, which had disabled the dreadnought, was their ace in the hole. But this time, they could not rely solely on the power of Prometheus. Earth would need a new strategy, one that would not only protect the planet, but send a message to the Galactic Council. "We've shown them what we can do," General Hall said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "Now it's time to show them that we won't back down." Meanwhile, on the alien flagship, the atmosphere was tense. The commanders were scrambling, preparing their forces for the next assault. They knew that Earth was resilient, but they were confident that their overwhelming numbers would eventually crush humanity. They had a secret weapon of their own, an experimental ship capable of bypassing Earth's defenses. This new ship, a hybrid of alien and stolen human technology, was their last hope. If this attack didn't succeed, the Council would face a humiliating defeat. Back on Earth, a sense of urgency had taken hold. The Galactic Council was already mobilizing, and their reinforcements would soon be in range. General Hall's plan was risky, but it was humanity's best chance at survival. The decision was made. Earth would take the fight to the Council, and they would do so on their own terms. The time for passive defense was over. It was time for humanity to go on the offensive. General Hall stood in front of the map, her hand hovering over the button that would activate humanity's counterattack. "This is it," she said, more to herself than to anyone else. "We fight, or we fall." As the countdown began, Earth's forces moved into position, preparing for the battle that would determine their future. The alien fleet was heading straight for Earth, but they would not find the easy victory they had hoped for. Humanity was ready. Just as the countdown hit zero, a massive wave of energy erupted from Earth's hidden bases, crackling through the sky like lightning. It was Prometheus, back online and stronger than before. The aliens had underestimated humanity's ingenuity and resilience, and now they would face the full force of Earth's fury. The alien ships, now within firing range, attempted to retaliate, but it was too late. Prometheus fired once more, a beam of concentrated energy cutting through the alien fleet. The first wave of ships exploded in a brilliant burst of light, but there were more coming. The battle had only just begun. General Hall watched from the command center, her gaze unwavering. Earth had taken a bold step forward, But she knew that the Council would not be easily defeated. The aliens would regroup, strategize, and send even more powerful ships. But humanity had proven something important today. They would never be cowed by the Galactic Council. The fate of Earth hung in the balance. The Council was determined to finish what they had started, but humanity was determined to survive, no matter the cost. As the battle raged on, one thing was clear. This war was far from over. The Galactic Council, humiliated by their earlier defeats, now understood the gravity of the situation. What they had once thought would be an easy conquest had turned into a deadly game of cat and mouse. The alien fleet had taken heavy losses, but it wasn't over. They were regrouping, making repairs, and preparing for their final push. The Council's leaders were desperate. They couldn't afford another failure. The pride of their species was on the line. Far below, Earth was bracing for the inevitable. The sudden success of Prometheus had been a blessing, but humanity knew that one weapon would not win this war. The threat was far from gone. With every hour, the Council's fleet grew stronger, and their reinforcements were arriving at a rapid pace. Earth's defenses were stretched thin, and supplies were dwindling. General Hall paced nervously in the command center, her fingers tapping a rhythmic beat on the console. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. Earth had to make its stand now. She knew that humanity's survival depended on this next battle. If they failed, they would face total annihilation. "We need more time," Hall muttered under her breath. "We need more time to prepare." But there was no time. The alien fleet was now positioned just outside Earth's atmosphere. The countdown to the final assault had begun. It was now or never. "We've fought hard, but we can't keep this up forever," said Captain Trent, one of Hall's most trusted officers. His face was grim, his eyes reflecting the seriousness of the situation. "We need to launch everything we've got. Every last ship, every last weapon. We can't afford to hold back." General Hall nodded, her face hardening with resolve. "Prepare the fleet," she ordered. "We're going in full force." As Hall turned to face the wall of monitors, she saw the first of the alien ships coming into view. It was a massive dreadnought, its surface gleaming under the light of the distant stars. The dreadnought was the heart of the alien fleet, and taking it down would be their best chance at turning the tide of the war. The tension in the air was palpable as Earth's remaining ships assembled, each one bristling with weapons and ready to fight for their lives. Prometheus had already begun powering up once more, its glowing energy core pulsing like a heartbeat. But this time, it wasn't just the humans' secret weapon. It was their last hope. The alien fleet opened fire, their lasers ripping through space in blinding streaks of energy. Earth's ships responded in kind, their cannons launching volleys of return fire. The battle had begun. General Hall's ship led the charge, cutting through the void with incredible speed. She had one goal, the alien dreadnought. The massive ship loomed ahead, its powerful shields crackling as Earth's fire rained down upon it. But the dreadnought wasn't an easy target. The Council's advanced technology had made it nearly indestructible. "We've got to break through their shields," Captain Trent shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "We can't keep this up for long." Hall's mind raced. She had one last gamble, a desperate plan she hoped would work. Earth's most advanced weapon, the Prometheus cannon, was powerful, but they hadn't used it to its full potential. She had a feeling that if they could combine the power of Prometheus with the right amount of precision, they might just be able to breach the dreadnought's shields. "Lock on target," Hall ordered. "All ships, focus your fire on the dreadnought's core. We'll give Prometheus one last chance." The ships coordinated their attacks, unleashing everything they had. Laser beams, missiles, and energy blasts filled the air, but the dreadnought's shields held firm. Hall's fingers hovered over the command controls. This was it. With a single command, she would risk everything. "Now," she shouted. In that instant, Prometheus fired. A beam of concentrated energy shot through space, striking the heart of the dreadnought. The beam pierced its shields, blasting a hole through the massive ship. The impact was enough to send shockwaves rippling through space, shaking the very fabric of the battlefield. The alien ship trembled, its outer layers beginning to melt under the intense heat. For a moment, there was silence. Then the dreadnought exploded. The force of the explosion rocked the surrounding alien ships. Debris scattered in all directions as the alien fleet reeled from the unexpected loss. But even as the dreadnought was torn apart, the remaining ships began to regroup. They would not give up easily. General Hall watched the destruction unfold, her heart pounding in her chest. The battle was far from over. The loss of the dreadnought had shaken the aliens, but they still had the numbers. The Council was relentless, and humanity had used their last weapon. "Hold your ground," Hall commanded. "We can't let up now." For Earth, the last stand had begun. Earth's forces were battered, but they were not broken. The final battle had started, and General Hall knew that whatever happened, humanity would fight to the end. The fate of Earth was now in their hands. The explosion of the dreadnought sent shockwaves through the remaining alien fleet. The once confident leaders of the Galactic Council now faced a humiliating defeat. The mighty ships that had once dominated the stars were now nothing more than twisted wreckage. But the Council was not a group to surrender easily. With the loss of their flagship, they grew desperate. They had underestimated humanity's strength and resilience, but they weren't ready to admit defeat. The remaining ships quickly regrouped, their commanders meeting in the heart of their remaining flagship. The Council members were furious. They had made a grave mistake by underestimating the human race. Now they were scrambling to hold on to whatever control they had left. "We can't lose Earth. Not after everything we've invested," one of the Council's senior officers, HFY, growled. "We must crush them before they rally again." HFY's words resonated with the rest of the Council. The loss of the dreadnought had shaken them to their core, but they knew one thing: Earth could still be crushed. All they needed was the right strategy. They still had overwhelming numbers, and they had a secret weapon. A device capable of disabling Earth's defense systems in a single strike. It was a last-ditch effort, a gamble to ensure their dominance. The Council decided to deploy the device, a devastating weapon that would render Earth's advanced defenses useless. But they knew they couldn't do it alone. They needed to launch an all-out assault to distract Earth's forces while they set up the weapon. This would be the final push. Failure was not an option. On Earth, General Hall watched with growing concern as the alien fleet reformed. Despite the loss of their flagship, the aliens were far from finished. The war had taken a brutal toll on both sides, and humanity had already thrown its best weapon into the fight. Earth's defenses were holding strong, but only just. "This is it," Captain Trent said, his voice grim as he analyzed the enemy's movements. "They're preparing for one last strike. If we don't stop them now, they'll disable our defenses, and we'll be sitting ducks." General Hall didn't need to hear any more. She had already come to the same conclusion. Earth's forces were running low on fuel, ammunition, and morale. The aliens had taken a heavy blow, but they still had the advantage in sheer numbers. This final assault could be the deciding factor in the war. "We can't let them get close enough to use that weapon," Hall said firmly. "We've already sacrificed too much. Prepare for a full-scale counterattack. We're going all in." The remaining ships in Earth's fleet began to regroup. The plan was simple: launch a direct assault on the alien fleet to break their concentration and prevent them from deploying their device. If humanity could strike hard and fast enough, they could prevent the Council from completing their final attack. But as the two sides closed in on each other, the tension was almost unbearable. The fate of Earth hung in the balance. "We're running out of time," Captain Trent muttered as he looked out at the alien ships, now forming up into tight formations. General Hall's eyes narrowed. "We won't lose. Not today." With a final rallying cry, Earth's forces surged forward, breaking through the alien lines. The battle raged on, with ships from both sides exchanging fire. Explosions lit up the void of space as missiles flew, and laser beams cut through the darkness. Humanity's forces fought with everything they had, but the Council was relentless. Every strike, every move they made was calculated and precise. They had their sights set on victory, and they wouldn't let Earth's resistance stop them. As the battle reached its peak, General Hall's heart raced. She could see the alien ships preparing to launch their device, their formation shifting to protect it. If they succeeded, Earth's defense systems would be neutralized. She couldn't let that happen. "Now," she shouted, slamming her fist onto the control panel. The Prometheus cannon fired once more, a beam of energy so intense it seemed to shatter the very fabric of space. It struck the heart of the alien formation, tearing through their shields and hitting their weapon systems. The explosion was blinding. For a moment, there was nothing but the fiery light of destruction. When the smoke cleared, Earth's forces stood victorious. The alien ships were scattered, their systems disabled, and their weaponry destroyed. The secret weapon had failed. The Council's final push had been stopped. But as Hall surveyed the battlefield, she knew the war wasn't over. The battle had been won, but the cost had been immense. Thousands of lives had been lost on both sides, and the toll of the conflict was undeniable. "We've done it," Captain Trent said quietly, his voice filled with disbelief. But General Hall's expression remained grim. "Not yet. They're still out there." She turned to the screen, watching as the remaining alien ships limped away, battered and broken, but still alive. The war was not over. Earth had won this battle, but the fight for survival would continue. The Galactic Council had underestimated humanity before, and they had paid the price. But Hall knew that the future was still uncertain. Earth's victory had sent a powerful message to the galaxy, but it was far from the end. "Prepare for the next phase," Hall said, her voice hardening. "We're not done yet." The war had taken everything. The stars themselves seemed to darken as the remains of both fleets floated in the cold vacuum of space. Earth had won a crushing victory, but victory came at a cost. As the alien ships limped away, humanity had sent a message, loud and clear: Earth would not be enslaved. But the Council, though shattered, had not given up. They had underestimated the resilience of humanity. And now, as they retreated, they plotted their next move. The war was far from over, and Earth's victory had only fueled their anger. In a dark, dimly lit chamber aboard the last surviving ship of the Galactic Council, the alien leaders gathered. The Council members, bruised and broken, were plotting their revenge. They would not let Earth's resistance go unanswered. "We cannot afford another failure," said Vicar, one of the Council's most influential members. His skin was cracked from the heat of battle, his eyes burning with hatred. "We will not be humiliated again. Earth must fall." Across the room, Varys, the commander who had led the attack on Earth, nodded solemnly. His ship had been severely damaged, his crew decimated, but his resolve had only hardened. "We have one more option," he said, his voice cold and calculating. "A final strike. We can't just fight them on their terms. We need to destroy them in a way they'll never see coming." The other Council members exchanged uneasy glances. The plan was reckless, dangerous, and their last resort. But Varys was right. If they didn't act fast, they would lose everything. The war had already caused too much damage to their empire. They needed to strike back and reclaim control. "What is this final strike?" Shakva, another high-ranking member of the Council, asked, his voice tinged with skepticism. "What could possibly turn the tide in our favor now?" Varys stood, his figure looming over the others. "The ancient weapon, the one the Council kept hidden for eons. It has the power to wipe out entire planets, to eradicate any resistance. With it, we will burn Earth to the ground." The Council members looked around at one another, a mix of fear and determination in their eyes. This weapon had been sealed away for a reason. Its power was overwhelming, its consequences far-reaching, But in this moment of desperation, it seemed like the only way to end the conflict. "We have no choice," Weaker said, his voice dripping with resolve. "Prepare the weapon. We will make sure that Earth pays for its defiance." Back on Earth, General Hall and her team were still reeling from the aftermath of the battle. The victory had been hard-won, and though their defenses were intact, the threat was far from over. Humanity had stood its ground, but now, with the enemy regrouping, they had to brace for whatever came next. Hall stood in the command center, her eyes fixed on the screen. Earth's fleet had been severely damaged, their resources stretched thin. The cost of the war was becoming clearer with every passing day. "We need to prepare for their next move," Captain Trent said, his voice heavy with concern. "They won't give up this easily. We know they have more resources and weapons at their disposal." "We've been through worse," Hall replied, her voice steady. "But we need to be ready. If they come at us again, we fight back. We can't let them win." The tension in the room was palpable. Humanity had proven its strength, but the Council's final weapon, an ancient device capable of obliterating entire worlds, could change everything. Hall knew that they couldn't afford to underestimate the alien threat again. This battle might be far from over. The Galactic Council had begun preparations for the final strike. Their ancient weapon was powerful beyond imagination, capable of sending shockwaves across the universe. It was an unstoppable force, and once activated, there would be no turning back. As the alien ships gathered, each one knowing that this could be their last chance for victory, the tension grew. The weapon was activated, its energy pulsing with an eerie glow. The final assault on Earth was about to begin. But Earth's leaders were not blind to the threat. General Hall had already anticipated this move. She had prepared a plan, a strategy that would counter the weapon before it could be unleashed. The Earth fleet gathered, ready for the final confrontation. The stakes had never been higher. The fate of the planet was in their hands. As the first wave of alien ships came into view, Hall stood firm, her eyes set on the screen, her fingers gripping the armrests of her chair. "We've fought this far. We'll fight until the end. This is Earth's moment." The battle that followed was like nothing Earth had seen before. The alien fleet charged, their weapons blazing, the ancient weapon looming in the distance, ready to strike. Humanity, in a last-ditch effort to save everything they held dear, launched a desperate counterattack. Missiles flew, lasers sliced through the void, and explosions lit up the dark sky. Earth's forces were doing everything they could to slow the Council's advance, but the alien ships were relentless. The ancient weapon was growing closer, its power growing with each passing second. Then, as if by some miracle, Earth's final weapon, a weapon created from the technology they had developed in secret, fired. The blast was like a comet striking the heart of the alien fleet. The weapon, designed specifically to counter the ancient force, struck the Galactic Council's weapon with unthinkable force. The explosion was deafening. It tore through the alien fleet, shattering their defenses and disabling their final weapon. The Council's remaining ships erupted in flames, their defeat sealed. Earth had won, not just the battle, but the war. The galaxy would remember that day, the day humanity fought back and won. And the Galactic Council. They would never again underestimate the strength of a planet that had nothing to lose and everything to protect. As the smoke cleared, General Hall looked at the wreckage of the alien fleet and whispered to herself, "We did it. Humanity will always fight. No one will ever enslave Earth again."